All right, Shalom. You reached the He Prayed channel. My name is Isaac Mawath. But first and foremost, I want to say, call Halagim Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai Bahashem Harakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of 7, 13, 19. Where I learned this truth from and who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiyar, the elect, 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes of Israel consist of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. The 144,000 being the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So this is not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that die in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah on his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. And as always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah for permitting me to do such. Baba Kashah Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah Ba'ashem Harachakodash allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. So this is another news article. This is going to be from the Washington Post. It says Trump's Greenland crusade pushes European allies to a breaking point, which this is all prophetic. Brussels. After a year, European leaders trying to charm President Donald Trump with flattery and deal making, and you got to watch an individual that, loves to be flattered. Right? And the scriptures speak about that. It says lucrative promises to purchase U.S. goods, including weapons, visits with royals, and gifts such as a custom engraved golf club. Hold on. Let's see, maybe this is it. So this is from Wikipedia. It's King Canute and the Tide. The story of King Canute and the Tide is apocryphal anecdote meant to illustrate the piety or humility of King Canute the Great, recorded in the 12th century by Henry of Huntingdon. In the story, Canute demonstrates to his flattering quarters that he has no control over the elements, the incoming tide, explaining that secular power is vain compared to the supreme power of the Most High. The episode is frequently alluded to in context where the futility of trying to stop the tide or a inexorable inexorable event is pointed out, but usually misrepresenting Canute as believing he has supernatural powers when Huntington's story is fact relates the opposite. Let me see. Let me see. Uh, see if there's a better actual story now that we got the name. Let me see something. Just bear with me. So I'm gonna read this about King Canute and about humility and not being somebody that's easily flattered, right? It's not too long. It says King Canute's story is one of power, empire building, and a famous lesson in humility that people still talk about today. His life reads like a blend of Viking ferocity and surprisingly sophisticated statecraft. Who he was, Canute the Great ruled England, and this was had to been a Jake. 1016 to 1035, Denmark 1018 to 1035, in Norway 1028 to 1035, forming what historians call the North Sea Empire. He was the son of Servine Forkbird, a Danish king who briefly seized the English throne. Canute rose to power through a mix of military conquest and political savvy, eventually becoming one of the most successful rulers of the early medieval period. And that's the period in which Jake ruled. His rise, after Servine died in 1014, the English king Ethelred returned from exile. Canute fought his way back into England, eventually defeating Edmund Arnside in 1016. With Edmund's death shortly after, Canute became the uncontested king of England. His reign. Canute wasn't just a conqueror, he was a stabilizer. He maintained peace between Danes and Anglo-Saxons, which more than likely those two groups are Israelite groups. He strengthened the church and aligned himself with Christian rulers. He built a unified empire across the North Sea, something no other Viking leader achieved at that scale. Right. And it wasn't a so-called white man. You know, Esau was still under subjection, and the real Vikings were so-called black men. And people are going to find that out in the kingdom of heaven. And you're going to look at this Edomite, the so-called white man, which they still call them, they still think they're white, but who started calling themselves white in 1681 in North Virginia due to the Bacon rebellions. You know, you're going to find out that you weren't none of these people that you claim to be. It says the famous tide story. This is the part everyone remembers. The legend says Canute set his throne by the seashore and commanded the incoming tide to stop. Of course, the tide kept coming and soaked him. But the point wasn't arrogancy, or the point wasn't arrogance, it was humility. He was teaching his flattering courtiers that even a king's power has limits, and only the Most High rules nature. This story became a symbol of wise leadership and the rejection of empty praise. Right? But leave it to Esau, leave it to Edom, like leave it to Beaver, leave it to Edom. You know, they want all the flatteries. They think they are the ones that are just moving and shaking shit. It says Canute's tales often used today to illustrate the limits of human authority, the danger of flattery, the difference between real power and perceived power, the surprising wisdom of a Viking king who understood humility. And like I said, the Vikings were so-called black men. But going back to the article, it says after a year of European leaders trying to charm President Donald Trump with flattery and deal-making, lucrative promises to purchase U.S. goods, including weapons, visits with royals and gifts such as a custom-engraved golf club, Trump's insistence on controlling Greenland has pushed transatlantic relations closer to a breaking point than leaders or analysts say they have seen in their lifetimes. Some of America's once closest allies say they see no choice other than to hit back and hard. Europe has very strong tools now, and we have to use them when we are not respected. French President Emmanuel Macron, who who was been in constant scandal due to his significant other, said Tuesday at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Macron complained of a world where the only rule that seems to matter is the rule of the strongest. Others said Trump had exhausted Europe's tolerance, which, you know, this is also going into his look was more stout than his fellows, right? It says we tried to appease the new president in the White House. We're dependent on the United States, so we chose to be lenient, said Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever, who was scheduled to meet with Trump on Wednesday. But now so many red lines are being crossed that you have the choice between your self-respect, being a happy vassal is one thing, being a miserable slave is something else, because these nations are vassal states, right? And that's the same setup that was during the time of the or I should say the pagan Greco-Roman Empire. They had vassal states. And these are the vassal states coming back, because this is the last extension of that Roman Empire, that particular Roman Empire. It says Trump's threats to impose punitive tariffs on European nations that exposed his demand for Greenland could hardly have presented a starker contrast in world views. His true social post landed just as European Union officials were in South America signing a blockbuster free trade deal covering some 700 million people. The protectionist U.S. president, meanwhile, was weaponizing trade in a bid for a NATO ally's sovereign territory. So Trump in there tearing shit up, man, which is all prophetic, man. You know, this is Revelation chapter 17, the doom of Babylon, which we know Babylon is America, where Babylon goes into the Hebrew Babel, which means confusion. There's nothing but confusion, when you look outside of America, man. This is Revelation chapter 7, verse 1. It says, "And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore. America is that great whore that sitteth upon many waters." Literally and spiritually. The spiritual is the people. The literal is nestled between two massive oceans. The number one largest ocean is the Pacific, and the second is the Atlantic. But the waters represents people. It says, "With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication," which is spiritual adultery through these bullshit ideas, ideologies, philosophies, doctrines, policies, "and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication." Right. They're loaded, you know. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet colored beast. That woman is America, and that scarlet colored beast is NATO and EU, and the EU Slovakia, full of names of blasphemy, things that are against God or against Yahweh Shem Shai, or speaking evil against, having seven heads. And this is the original setup of their kingdom, going back to the vassal states of the Roman Empire that are coming back today. And it starts with the military aspect, having seven heads and 10 horns. Let me get that real quick. See if I can find it. I don't want to look in my computer. Red Dragon. See. Yeah. Hold on. Um, well, I'll probably just make another video. I don't want to really go into my computer because I don't know if I have it or not. Um, so it's making it a little bit harder. And I could see if they wanted to suppress that truth because we're in the time of that. Um, we just get it from Copilot. Uh, that ain't right. So this is the founding EEC, the European Economic Community. The EEC was created by the Treaty of Rome, 1957, and launched in 1958 with six founding nations. Which you had also, Just bear with me. I'm looking because I want to get the right the right names. Uh, oh, I didn't think they still had the. I could have went here the whole time. I didn't think they still had their site up. So okay. So the horror represents America. The water Yahal Bashim Yahal Shah, Barak Yahal Bashim Yahal Shah, Slak Yahal Bashim Yahal Shah. It says the 10 horns represent the common market of the European Economic Community, EEC, established in 1958. Today, the EEC is known as the European Union. So the seven is Germanium Major, Germanium Minor, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, the British, the Greeks, and then the horns. And these are all Edomite kingdoms. The 10 horns is Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Greece, Spain and Portugal, England and Ireland, and West Germany. And the wine goes into its philosophy, which they uh, push democracy, they push their Christian religion, they push idolatry, they push homosexuality with the LGBT movement, they push lies, they push and encourage adultery. You're seeing the display of covetousness with them, taking sovereign nations' resources, and they push murder, rape, robbery, and murder. So going back to verse 3, it says, So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns, which, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, we have that understanding. Verse 4 says, And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in their hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Right? Which purple and scarlet is representative of royalty because they were very expensive dyes. I think you needed to have a certain beetle, if my memory serves me correctly, in order to make the color purple. So those that could afford it were usually nobility. So going back to, I'll read verse 5 and I'll jump down. It says, And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And that's dealing with America and who's at the forefront of America, you so-called white people who are actually the Edomites. Jumping down to verse 15, and he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, because they're trying to establish this new world order. That's going to encompass all the earth. And the 10 horns, which we just read, which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. And we're just reading the article right there. And shall make her desolate and naked. They're going to go to war with America. And shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. They're going to shoot their nuclear missiles on America. And this is also representative of Rome, right? And, this is the feet of the statue. And we're at the feet of it. Daniel chapter 2, verse 40, it says, "In the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron," which, how is talking about Rome, because Rome existed during what they call the Iron Age. But that 1,000 years in which Satan would be loosed from his prison, that's the extension of Rome. "For as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all things, all these shall break in pieces and bruise." And that's how ruthless the Romans were, just as how the Americans are. "And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron." So even in this setup today, dealing with NATO and the EU, there's weak nations and there's stronger nations. "The kingdom shall be divided," and you go into their politics, they kind of are divided because of that, man. Because the stronger nations have to suffer the weak. "But there shall be in it of the strength of the iron," because you have certain nations like Germany and England that are strong militarily. "For as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay," you have weaker nations like Norway telling its 13,000 citizens that they might get their shit confiscated, which I did in the previous video. It says, "So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another." Right, because of national pride, I guess you could say. These nations, a lot of these European nations, because of World War II, World War I, they still hate each other, man. So they're not all, at one or at unison, nor are they at one or at unison with the United States. It says, "Even as iron is not mixed with clay." And that's the spirit that Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua is putting on them, man. This is Isaiah chapter 14. Verse 4 says that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. And right now that king is Donald J. Trump. "And say, how have the oppressors ceased?" Which the oppressor is you so-called white people that go back to the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. It says the golden city ceased, because gold is the number one precious metal, the most precious. Despite you having Esau putting certain metals above it, but gold is the most precious. So America being likened onto a golden city, it means it's the number one city. It's the number one superpower. It says Yahweh have broken the staff, and your staff is your support. You get supported by the staff. And if that's the case, the wicked staff is not only their military, but also the left-hand side. where they've been, getting their power from. The left hand is going to turn against them. Going back to Isaiah the 19th chapter, how he's going to cause Egypt to err in every work thereof. Everything that this damn devil is doing right now, he's having trouble because it's not the right thing to do. Because while he's not upright in spirit, and me personally, I can speak for myself. I love the fact that Donald Trump is in office and the president of the United States, man. You know, I mean, who else? Who else could it have been to give us such a climatic end to this damn rule and age of Esau? It says, in the scepter of the rulers, he who smote, and the smote means to kill or killing the people, and wrath with the continual stroke. He's in constant wars, man. You see. It says America's track record is surprisingly consistent. The United States has spent almost all of its existence at war, using the most authoritative tallies available. U.S. peace since U.S. peace years since 1776. Multiple independent analyses converge on the same number, roughly 15 to 17 total years of peace since 1776. So that's a continual stroke, man. And that's Esau. That's the red horse flexing his sword, his blessing. He that ruled the nations in anger. And that's what he's doing right now. He's ruling the nations in anger. He appointed himself as the king of the world. Esau, I'm speaking about. As you know, that's his appointing, because of his blessing. But the Most High is going to change that when he begins to bring his wrath upon Esau. He's going to be persecuted. It says it's persecuted and none hindereth. No one's going to come to his aid and try to stop it. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. And that's going to be in the kingdom of heaven because this damn devil is about to be brought down. And these devils don't even know what's going to happen, man. Like when the Bass brothers said in The Mighty Ducks, you never knew what happened to him. Didn't even know what happened to him. And, the Bass brothers bashed his ass against the glass. No homo. If you got a dirty mind, I'm talking about hockey. Verse 8, it says, yeah, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller has come up against us. Which is going back into being a cutter of trees. Esau is all about stealing land and deforestation to get the wood and get, the resources. It says, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming, which, that goes into slavery, destruction and slavery. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. So the chief ones of the earth are being stirred up against America right now, man. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. So all the kings of the nations, all they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Because, once this economy crashed, that's it. You thought America was a shithole now. Oh boy, you ain't seen nothing yet. It says thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows, the worm or the decay, is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, which Lucifer simply means light bearer, or the one that is in power. And the real Lucifer is the Heavenly Father's Son, who the world really calls Jesus Christ, because he's going to be the light bearer in the new age. But now, right now, in these times, it's Esau, being guided by the spiritual demon Satan, who is the son of God on the left-hand side. It says, Son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? So what America is doing, especially with its tariffs, is weakening the nations. This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 8. It says, remove out of the midst of Babylon, which is America, and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans, which this is going to happen via a so-called UFOs, or the chariots of Israel. And the Chaldeans is representative of the elite bankers, which were the upper echelon of the Babylonian society. And be as the he-goats before the flocks. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against America a assembly of great nations. And, those nations might as well have, NATO members in it that become aligned with Russia or Gog from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. So if they set themselves in array against America, that means that America's military had to been destroyed. And, we're going to see what Yahweh Bashim Yahushua got in store for America when they attack Iran or Iran. It says, from thence she shall be taken. Their arrows, which are the nuclear missiles, shall be as a mighty expert man. And that mighty goes into hypersonic. Not the word itself. I'm just saying they have hypersonic missiles now. So you would think, hypersonic, well, that expert archer performing archery has to be a mighty one, man. He hitting them motherfuckers at, 15,000 miles per hour per target. It says none shall return in vain. So those missiles ain't going to come back and say, oh, I didn't detonate. I didn't hit my target. That ain't going to happen, man. All those missiles are going to hit their targets, right? And Chaldeans shall be a spoil, right? Those Chaldeans, those rich elite bankers are going to be the first crop of slaves. All that spoil her shall be satisfied, because all the riches that they hoarded up is going to belong to them, which is going to be the elect of the nation of Israel. Save Yahweh, right? So, with that, I didn't want to make this video long. I know it was kind of drawn out through the gaps in time, trying to, be moved by the Spirit into the righteous direction as I pray for before I make any of these videos. But Nonetheless, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified, and I'm going to say shalom.